In this age of AI search, data accuracy is more important than ever. This is why Schema App is introducing the Entity Manager, one of the primary tools in our Entity Hub offering. The Entity Manager empowers you to curate the entities that are being identified and deployed in your schema markup, through either making edits to the properties associated with those entities or blocking less important entities from deploying entirely. This demo will take you through that process, so let's dive in. The Entity Manager can be accessed from two different points. From within the entity reports, you can find an entity that you want to manage, then click the Associated Actions button and select Edit Entity to load it into the Entity Manager. Alternatively, you can just select Entity Manager from the menu on the left. The Manager will load all of your entities in alphabetical order. To begin managing your entities, you can select one from the list or look for a specific entity in the search box. In this case, I'm going to use ChatGPT as the entity that I want to make edits to. Once I've selected an entity, I can review the information about it. Every identified entity will have a preferred label. This is the name returned by the API. It will have same as properties, so these will link out to resources that represent the same entity in either Wikidata, Wikipedia, and/or Google's Knowledge Graph. Lastly, the type property shows which term from the schema.org vocabulary is being used to categorize this entity. In this case, the entity of ChatGPT is simply being categorized as a thing. As part of the management process, I'll want to make sure that the label corresponds with the categorization that's been provided, and that each of these same as values is also linking to the correct entity. So I'll want to start by just clicking on these links to open them. Checking out these resources does two things. Number one, helps me confirm that I'm actually linking out to the right resources, and two, helps me learn a little bit more about them. For example, the Wikidata page lets me see other terms that ChatGPT is known by, and also lets me learn a bit about the properties and attributes of this entity. For example, that ChatGPT was incepted in November of 2022, and that it's used in things like natural language generation, machine translation, and AI-generated text. And great news, I get to leverage all of this rich structured data information within my own schema markup so that the machines consuming it explicitly understand what I'm talking about within my content. Next, I want to check out the Wikipedia page, just also to confirm I'm linking to the right thing. I could do a little read-up if I want to. This is much more human readable and friendly to review as a person. And then lastly, and maybe most interestingly, I can also see this entity as it's showing up in Google. So our link to the Google Knowledge Graph entry is actually going to take me to a search engine results page that represents this entity in Google's own knowledge graph, which also interestingly is summarizing a lot of the information that we also just reviewed in Wikipedia and Wikidata. So I've just confirmed that this entity is actually linking to the things that I want it to, which is great. But what if I wanted to make edits? Well, to do this, you'll click the Edit Entity button and start making some changes. Maybe the labeling isn't quite right to me and I actually want it to show up in my schema markup with a different title. I could change the preferred label. The old label will be saved as the alternative label just for provenance purposes. I could also add, remove, or change any of these same as properties. Maybe in this case, I don't actually want it to link to the Google Knowledge Graph entry because I'm not in full agreement with how it's being represented there. And maybe the typing information I think is wrong. I know Schema.org doesn't have a category for chatbots, unfortunately, but we can pretend that this is maybe a product rather than a thing. My changes are automatically saved, but I can also click the Done button afterwards. If it turns out I actually shouldn't have made those changes and I want to revert my entity back to what was originally returned by the API, I can click the Undo Edits button, just confirm that I am actually okay with reverting back to the original entity, and everything will be updated accordingly. If I come across an entity that I don't actually want to have deploying in my markup, I can also control that with the deployment toggle here. So every entity is set to allowed by default. This means that it will automatically get embedded within the schema markup that mentions these entities, but I can block it by clicking this button and clicking blocked. Lastly, in the case that I'm reviewing an entity that's maybe a bit ambiguous, if I want to see where these entities are showing up in my own content, a sample of the URLs that the entity has appeared on are available down below. So I may want to open up a couple of these pages, do a search for the name of my entity, and see where it's showing up just to kind of get a better understanding of how it's being used within my content. The automation and scalability of our entity linking services are really powerful. We also know how important it is to be able to curate that data layer, and our Entity Manager empowers you to do just that. So get in touch with us today to see how you can leverage our Entity Hub solution.